My name is Joan Anim Addo. I was born in the Caribbean on a very small island, a tiny island called Grenada. I was one of the children kind of numbered as very special, very able.
And what drew your family to move to the UK?
It was my mother who decided that everyone seemed to be going, she said, but I understood much more clearly later on that it was about the very limited opportunities available, especially to women. But fortunately, I think my mother noticed that I was becoming somebody different. So she went up to the school and had to have words with them because, of course, what they did was they decided that here I was, a black child from the Caribbean, and that they knew about immigrant children from the West Indies, as it was then called. So I was placed in one of the lowest streams, of course, and I was clearly bored out of my mind. I then had to suffer the displeasure of my class teacher, my English teacher. She's asked me, "Who do you think you are?" And obviously, to ask a young child that it's not a question that you could answer because you haven't a clue to a large extent. You're just discovering who you are. But she was very annoyed. It was very hostile. It was consistently hostile in lots of ways that we would today consider gross. There was the assumption that black children were not able, and we were put in these in the lowest streams, yeah. And it still goes on to a certain extent. Every time someone comes into the system, they are still too often treated in that way, as though they're idiots and wouldn't be able to achieve. I was essentially a dreamer, but not the kind of dreaming about what I was going to be, because again, the opportunities to be, those were always very limited. To be a professional, I don't know, whatever, dancer or singer or painter or whatever it is, it was always very limited. Because money was scarce, cash was a problem, and also because there just weren't the opportunities. I tell the story of remembering myself as a young child studying ants for a very long time, you know, just spending ages with a sense of myself alone, looking at how the ants moved around. So that kind of dreamer I was, which is why I think I then have seen myself as a poet. We had a new teacher who had been a mature student. So she came in, she said to me, "What are you going to do when you leave school?" And I said, "I don't know," obviously. That's what you say when the careers people have told you that you will, you could get a good job as a shop assistant. So I said, I don't know. And she said, "You should go to college." And I said, "That's very fine, but you know, my mother is working her socks off and I need to be able to help her." And she said very wisely, "Look, Joan, if you go to college and you get that extra qualification, you'll be in a better position to help your mother." I started off teaching in primary and secondary schools. In fact, I started secondary and I worked my way down to primary because I found that teachers were always complaining in secondary schools that the rot happened at primary school. And then when I was in primary schools, I noticed that they said, you know, it's the infant school. And because I was primary secondary trained, I wasn't supposed to be able to teach infants. But I did work my way into infants. Those 7-year-olds were stunning. They were so smart, and they were so open to different ways of thinking. They were magical. First of all, it was important to me to study my culture, the culture that was very important and about which I had learnt practically zilch. And secondly, I was aware that there were increasingly large numbers of young people for whom Caribbean culture was important, and they did not have the facility to learn about that. I became increasingly aware that I was not seeing myself reflected on the page. And if you spend your lifetime not seeing yourself reflected on the page, why should you read? And why should you persist at reading? And why should you be determined to explore? Let's make it a little bit easier for Black children to see themselves and to understand who they are. Ours is a complex history, and it seemed to me really important to be in a position where I could help students coming up to see that this was an important area of culture, not one that we look down on, as we've been taught, but one that was worth exploring. Always being in a minority position. That was a real challenge within the university system. Finding conferences on Caribbean women's writing, pretty difficult. I realised later on that actually nobody had been organising Caribbean women writing conferences. So I set up a lot of conferences. I set up lots of things. I also edited lots of books arising out of those conferences, and I was pretty disgusted about the publishing situation. So I did set up, crazily perhaps, a publishing company. It was called Mango Publishing, with obviously Caribbean flavour. The way in which people survived slavery and resisted what was intended by enslavement in the Caribbean was something to be celebrated. So I set about writing a libretto. I found a composer, and you know, it has become an opera and all of those things. And again, it's not always easy for people to understand why I would want to be involved with opera, but that certainly, you know, for me was a triumph.
What's the name of the opera?
It's called Imuinda, who we could think of as the mother of the Caribbean nation. For a while, I was surprised that people kept asking me, how did you become the first Black woman literature professor in the UK? And I thought, well, how did I become? I'm not sure. There was no 5-year plan or 10-year plan or whatever it is. I simply, as I said, was curious, and I kept pursuing what I was interested in doing. But I would say now that to young people that actually the world is, in a way, slightly more receptive, and that it is possible to do the thing that is really important to you, but you do need to do a little bit of planning. You need to allow yourself to see what it is and to plan for it.